Hello and welcome back to this old channel of mine. I've not used it for like 4 years, but I thought I would bring it back because Sunderland are back in the Premier League and I want to talk about Sunderland more. And I thought the best place to sort of restart this channel is to talk about the transfer window and the state of play and where Sunderland are, because Sunderland have done a ton of business, which I'll go through. Obviously, if you're watching this, you will know what Sunderland have done. But yes, I'm going to talk about what Sunderland have done and also what they need to do if they are to survive in the Premier League. So that's coming up right now. So what has happened so far? As you will know, Sunderland have been one of the busiest teams in the transfer window so far. They've brought in, I'm going to read off a list here because I can't remember them all. It is so many. Enzo Lefebvre, Ronaldo, Granit Xhaka, Noah Siddiqui, Chemston Talby, Simon Adingra and Habib Diarra so far. I also, just as I was about to record, see they've confirmed Robin Roofs and they are likely to sign Mark Guéhi from Chelsea, who's a centre forward. And I think if you were looking at that list there in terms of positions, you'd say Sunderland have done pretty well stocking up that central midfield. Fullback positions look largely all right because of the players they already had in the building. Wingers, they've added, I know Romain Mundo's injured, so there is an issue there. It's fair to say that they probably will want to add a player there. In terms of strikers, Mark Guéhi's coming in. They've also got Eliza Mienda and Will Cisador. So I think Sunderland look pretty covered across the field. Oh, and also they've added a goalkeeper, as we've just seen this morning. But they really need centre-backs, and that is going to be the focus, really, of today's video. Sunderland are absolutely desperate. It's difficult to rest as a Sunderland fan until they can get this centre-back position up to speed like the rest of the positions of the field, because Sunderland have done such a good job, but there is that glaring, that niggle in the back of their brain that Sunderland will struggle in the Premier League unless they add, for me, 2, but certainly at least 1 top-level centre-back. So what is the state of play at centre-back? So if Sunderland had every single player fit at the back, and Sunderland have a pretty obscene list of injuries considering it's only pre-season, but yeah, at the back, right, Sunderland would have Dan Ballard, who is fit right now, and I think Dan Ballard, he's been linked with Premier League moves. I don't want to say he's Premier League ready, but I think Dan Ballard is good enough to play in the Premier League. So I have no issues there. I think Luke O'Nien, people will have question marks over him, but I see Luke O'Nien as sort of cover for everywhere in defence. He is so versatile. We've seen it in the past. He's played right back, left back, centre back. He can play in central midfield. Heck, when we had that Tony Mowbray era with no striker, I thought throw Luke O'Nien up there. I think he can play in a lot of positions. But I think Luke O'Nien will be like the versatile player at the back. I think if you look at our full-back situation, you've got, say, Trey Hume at right back, Niall Huggins behind him. Then you've got Dennis Sirkin and Ronaldo at left back. But there's Adji Elise as well in there, who I'll talk about as a centre-back. But I think Sunderland needed a sort of versatile player like Luke O'Nien, and Luke O'Nien will be able to fill in there when he's back fit. So, yeah, I've got no issues with Luke O'Nien being part of this squad. You've then got Jensen Seelt, who has done pretty okay in pre-season. I think he's looked quite good. But I don't think Sunderland will be comfortable going in with him as a starting centre-back for the opening day of the season. You've got Adji Elise as well, who I really, really love when he's on the pitch, but he's just not on the pitch enough. So Sunderland definitely can't rely on Adji Elise, unfortunately, even though I think he's a great player. And then you've also got Leo Hjelde, who's currently injured. I do not believe that Leo Hjelde is going to be the answer. So while I think Sunderland have done cracking work in the transfer window, and look, there is time. There's like 2 weeks before the Premier League season starts. Actually, over 2 weeks. Sunderland have got a lot of time to get this rectified, and they've done so well to get in a position where they only need, in my opinion, 3 players to sign. But it is concerning that, that is an area that we've not seen to make headroom in. Look, I don't want to speculate about names because I don't necessarily believe what I see in the press. John Lucimi, who's a player that we've been heavily linked with, but Sunderland aren't normally heavily linked with players, so that feels to me like potentially agent chatter. I think Sunderland normally are doing business quite quietly. When we saw that with Robin Roofs, not linked, and then suddenly Sunderland are signing them. That's how Sunderland like to do their business, so I wouldn't be shocked if you just randomly, even as this video is recording right now, if just, a Keith Downey or a Fabrizio Romano was to just say, right, Sunderland are signing this player and it's nearly done. Because that's largely been how our business has been done so far this season. And I think the good news is that clearly Sunderland do have the money to spend there. So, it's not going to be cheap. Sunderland will have budgets. It feels like they've budgeted on every single position on the field. So there's plenty of reasons to be positive. And I think if they were to get these two centre-backs in, the squad would be near perfect. And that's a pretty crazy thing to say considering the amount of work that needed done. So PSR Room. I am no accountant, and I think it's boring that we as football fans have to worry about PSR, but worry we shall. So where are Sunderland in terms of PSR? This is a very, very brief overview and just what I can see from what I've read. Sunderland need two centre-backs and a left winger. I think that's probably what they want to add before the end of the window. Look, they might recruit elsewhere, maybe add in one or two other positions if they become available. But I reckon budget-wise, Sunderland probably have about £80 million to spend. I remember reading or listening to Kieran Maguire talk about Sunderland's PSR Room. He reckoned they could spend around £200 million. So you factor in what they've sold with Job and Tommy Watson and what they've spent. I'm guessing roughly it'll be about £80 million to fill those three positions. So that's a lot of money if Sunderland want to go all the way to the top of their PSR headroom. There's also plenty of fringe players to sell at Sunderland. Triantis, Pembele, Alan Brown, Hamir, Rusin, Bar, Matete, Paveda, Joe Anderson. I don't think it's going to make a lot of money for Sunderland. It'll certainly help in terms of the wage bill. They'd maybe get a few £1 million. Obviously, they'll loan probably a few of them out. I don't know if there'll be massive takers. I think some of them will have had promotion contract, bonuses, which is ridiculous considering none of them really played. But they will be on higher wages now, so I don't know if they'll necessarily get people buying them because their contracts will be higher. Potential that Sunderland could sell a Dennis Serkin or a Dan Neil. They're both entering the last year of their contracts. Conservatively, that'll probably pocket them somewhere in the region of 20, potentially £25 million. So that would really help with PSR Room, and maybe if they think they are stocked, certainly in centre midfield with Dan Neil. Reports that obviously Granit Xhaka is going to be the new captain at Sunderland. You have to wonder if his situation is becoming a bit untenable, especially since he hasn't signed a new deal, which would be a shame because obviously he's a player that has been at Sunderland a long time, been with us through the leagues, academy product, Sunderland fan. It would be a shame if Dan Neil was to leave, but it feels to me like the writing could be on the wall there. I hope I'm wrong. So if Sunderland were to sell Dan Neil, potentially Dennis Serkin, they would have to bring in another left back, admittedly, if they did that. But I think that could give them the extra boost if they needed to, at the end of the window, if they felt like they needed maybe another position to change things. But I think the time is ticking at Sunderland. I think the fact that Sunderland have had such a favourable fixture list to start the season is why they have been so active early on in the window. My concern is that if you weren't to have the team that you wanted for that West Ham game, and West Ham's a team that I think are going to be towards the bottom end of the league this coming season, it's a favourable game to start, and if you lose that game because you don't have your desired centre-halves, that would be concerning, and that would be a real blow, considering the amount of work Sunderland have done across the field to have a game lost because of centre-backs. And I actually don't think that this will happen. I think Sunderland will get centre-backs in probably before the games next weekend. I'm pretty sure that this is a real position of need. And I've been so impressed with what Sunderland have done in terms of recruitment. I would be shocked, genuinely shocked, if we were sat for the opening day of the season with Dan Ballard and Jensen Seelt as the centre-back pair. And I just don't think that will happen. I think it'll be Dan Ballard and another player. And it's no slight on Jensen Seelt, but I think even he would admit he's probably not at the level required. But let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you if you're coming back to this channel after a long time away. Please subscribe as well if you are new. And we'll be back with more videos about Sunderland. It's an exciting time to be a Sunderland fan, and I can't wait to dive into it as the season goes on, as the transfer window hots up, and hopefully Sunderland add the players that they need.